Number 6, how about just talking to our adversaries to resolve problems? You know, Yitzhak Rabin, that great slain Israeli president, said, "You make peace with your enemies, not your friends." The Bush administration basically says we should only talk to countries who exhibit good behavior. Pretty soon, we're only going to be talking to the Vatican. We need face-to-face. That's supposed to be funny. I got a new speech right. We should be talking directly with North Korea. We should be talking directly to Syria, to Iran, for a comprehensive peace settlement. As President Clinton's envoy and UN ambassador, I know that direct talks work. Now, I came here from the Sudan. I flew into New Mexico, got in at 2 a.m., got in another plane at 6 a.m., and I was here yesterday. I just returned from the Sudan. I was asked to go there by a group called the Save Darfur Coalition, a group of humanitarian workers that asked me to go and try to help. I held talks with the president of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir, who Parade magazine rates as the world's worst dictator. President Clinton used to say, "We'll send Richardson, bad guys like him." I also met with leaders of several rebel movements, and they're in a war, a civil war that has killed more than 300,000 people. It's displaced more than 2.5 million human beings. If you ever get a chance to see how lucky we are, go to a refugee camp overseas someday and see those that have been displaced from war, rape, devastation, famine, and your pride in being an American and helping will be stirred. My goal on this trip was simple, but not easy: to start a peace process, to help end the war. And by talking directly to this president, we made progress. The government of Sudan and the Darfur rebels agreed to a 60-day ceasefire, an international peace summit. I think it's a breakthrough. It'll be a little iffy in the days ahead, but it's a real chance for peace. So it's my firm belief that you can solve most problems. I'm an optimist. I'm positive. If you just talk things through. Even with the worst of rogues. Sometimes it even works with Republicans. No, I'm just, the last step towards a more realistic foreign policy is that we have to face the reality in Iraq and refocus on the real dangers. And I said to Governor Hodges, should I talk about Iraq? I mean, it's a very patriotic, strong military state. Because I said, Jimmy, I really feel strongly about it. He said, talk about it. So if you don't like what I say, talk to Hodges. Iraq is a quagmire which Democrats did not create, but which we must now help resolve. With thousands of men, women, and children dying each month, and our troops in harm's way, staying the course, as the president wants, is not an option. As I said exactly 1 month ago in New Hampshire, the proposal by Senator McCain and the president to escalate the number of troops is wrong. And it's really wrong. And since the president has chosen military escalation, I believe that Democrats must use all of our constitutional powers to demand full accountability. As many generals have warned, this escalation will stretch our military to the limit and leave us without the troops to respond to other crises in the world. And let's remember, every time that we've sent in more troops, violence increased. I've negotiated with some very tough people over the years. The Sudanese, the Taliban, North Korean generals, Fidel Castro, Saddam Hussein. I've got American hostages, American servicemen out of prison, got them home to their families. You have to be tough and pragmatic in a dangerous world. When you dialogue, you have to deliver a tough message. You have to look unpleasant realities in the face. And this is the status of Iraq. It's in a state of civil war, and we cannot stop it. There is no American military solution to Iraq's political crisis. My belief is that the only viable option is to redeploy our forces and compel the Iraqis to take responsibility for their country. Redeployment from Iraq would address the real dangers facing us, like international terrorism, like Afghanistan. So we can also negotiate from a position of strength with countries like Iran, Syria, and North Korea. You know, one thing this administration has never understood, and that is that diplomacy and military power are not alternatives to one another, but rather are complementary sources of strength. Because, and please remember this, it's one thing I've learned. Diplomacy without power is weak, but power without diplomacy is blind. Now, I'm going to turn to the end of my speech. You're supposed to clap. This is what happens sometimes when, the speech gets a little long. But I'm really only in my 14th minute. It seems like 9. I want to thank Chairman Joe Irwin for inviting me. I mean, this is a guy that he made sure that South Carolina, along with Don Fowler, that you were the first primaries. But, there's a real change. You are now bunched up. And so America now has 2 states with diversity in the early primaries, Nevada and South Carolina. But you're really the first state with a diversity constituency in a primary. So you're going to see a lot of people here. South Carolina is going to have a historic opportunity, possibly, to select the next president. And I agree with the Secretary, I still call him Secretary, that you should watch all the candidates. Keep your powder dry. And I have to admit, I have a few ideas as to what the next president might look like. Here are my ideas that I want you to consider. Number 1, maybe someone with a little hands-on foreign policy experience, like a former ambassador or a special operative. Perhaps somebody with some expertise in national energy policy, maybe a former Secretary